Okay, gang, as you know, I've been working on the 65 Mustang known as Mystique, and I've been working on the core support and fender aprons. I have the right apron and the core support, but the left apron that I got was bent, so I'm going to have that replaced. So I'm going to move on and do some other things on this car. The left quarter panel had been worked on, or the whole car had been worked on at a body shop, and I'll show you what they did to the inside. And this isn't that bad, it's just not great. They made this patch panel and kind of tacked it to the car, to the inside. And I made a secondary patch panel down there. And again, not the greatest, but it would do the job. And they also did some work on the outer wheelhouse. The owner doesn't like any of this, and I don't blame him. So we're going to address that. On the passenger side, there's a couple of patches stuck to the car somehow. And there's also a bunch of Bondo piled on out here. So along with that, there's some rust through at the left floor pan. There's some damage up there. You can see rust through. And then on the passenger side, it's not too bad, but there's a bunch of pitting and stuff in this pan as well. So that's going to be addressed. Now, to do all that, I've been provided with a patch panel to go on the passenger side. This would normally be a filler, and I hate the way they box these things because they always bend them in half and stuff them in a box. But I won't be using that one in particular, but that would normally go right here. I also have an outer wheelhouse for the driver's side and a full quarter panel as well. Beyond that, I've got this. Now this is a full trunk pan. This comes, this goes all the way up into the passenger area. That's a cross brace that would hold your shock mounts. That's a very heavy piece. I won't be using that. It also comes with, over there, these are your, what would be your tie down for your spare tire. There's a couple rubber plugs for the filler holes up here. And then there's some rubber bushings for your bump stop, basically on your rear end. So this comes complete as an assembly, and that's good. I like that. But I'm going to have to do some modification. In order to get this even in the car, I'm going to have to remove the quarter panel. Well, I don't have to remove the quarter panel, but I'm going to remove the quarter panel. And I'm also going to remove the tail panel. So I will probably replace this tail panel with a new one. It's not bad, but it does have some Bondo work going on here and here. And there's some rust down in the seam, so I'll be further ahead just to replace it. I'll also replace these. They didn't come with the kit, but I'll get some of those on order. And I don't want to replace this whole pan because in order to do that, I'm going to have to come up and go underneath the floor pan. That's going to be pretty challenging without having to separate a lot of things. So I'm going to leave that part in there because it's solid. What I will probably end up doing is cutting this somewhere along this line, and then maybe up around where these spot welds are here. I will also have to redo the welds to the inner wheelhouses on both sides, and then of course weld this back down to the frame as it should be. That'll eliminate all the rust and make this a very solid car. It's a little bit more challenging to do this basically as an assembly, but it'll turn out really nice and it'll look really good. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to get started on this today and see how far I can get. Ah yes, I get to use the plasma cutter again. As you can see, I've removed the quarter panel, and now you can see more of the patches that were put in. And there was a little piece down here that they used to weld it to the inner structure of the rocker panel. I had to grind out a bunch of filler in here, so it looks like, I don't know, they were trying to do several things with this patchwork. The other thing, the outer wheelhouse was rotted through, and This is sort of attached, but they should have fixed that. I wouldn't have put that quarter on, or that patch on top of that outer wheelhouse. So I'll end up lopping off all this stuff because I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to replace these pieces since they're available, and these are pitted up and rusted. It'll be just simpler to remove those. I will salvage the brace for the tail panel and where the latch, the trunk latches. And in this case, there were just a couple of spot welds that I just drilled through and broke the welds. So I'm going to progress. I also will salvage these pieces. They do make them, but these are much better than what they reproduce. So I will reuse that. And this one I may leave intact and in place. Since I'm not removing the quarter, I'm just doing a patch on the bottom. But when I do that, it'll expose the bottom of this side of the floor or trunk pan, so I can get access to it as well. So I'll just keep on keeping on and get this thing apart. Alright, well, I'm making some progress. As you can see, I've cut out some pieces in the back here, and I've trimmed out the main opening. I stayed away from the frame, the rails. There's a flange, and I bared the metal on all these spot welds so I knew what the flange was, and then I made sure I stayed away from it. So I cut out the main inner structure there. I also cut off the perimeter of the outer wheelhouse, and I'll have to do some separation. I will drill through these spot welds because when a new panel comes up behind it, that'll create the welding surface that I need. On this section here, where what makes up the window opening on the inside, these are 3 panels together. You got this panel, the outer wheelhouse, and the inner wheelhouse, and of course they're all sandwiched with a spot weld. So I will drill through these so I can separate it and get this outer wheelhouse out of the way. I'll have to do some work down here to separate this piece, and as I go along I will drill through these spot welds only to the point of separation of that rear panel. I don't want to go forward because I don't need to, so I will find that stop point and drill through, because when I put this new pan in, it'll create the weld surface that I'm going to use in here. So that'll take care of that. I still have the passenger side sheet metal to separate from the trunk pan, and I took the patch panel, set it up in place, drew a line, and then drew another line. That'll be my cut line. That'll leave me some material to work with as I need to trim and fit the new piece in place. I will retain the rest of the quarter panel, the taillight pocket or filler piece here, and of course this piece which makes up the corner of the trunk opening. So at this point I'll just continue on doing my separation. I do have the car sitting on jack stands. I'm comfortable with that. Some people may want to add some bracing at some point, or put the weight in different, support the weight of the car. But really, there's no real weight on the back of this car at this point. All you have is the sheet metal and the frame rails themselves, and the rear end is supported by the jacks. So I'm comfortable with doing it the way I am. If you want to add some bracing, you can. I've done several of these cars like this and haven't had a problem. The only one that ever gave me any issue really was the blue car that I did the full floor pan in. I did have a conflict with the left quarter fitting properly, but of course I fixed that. So I'm comfortable with this, but if you feel like you need to add some bracing or support, by all means do it. Makes you happy. And I will drive on. Okay, this will probably be the last segment of this video. I've got all the sheet metal removed from the top of the frame rails on both sides. I also drilled out the spot welds that were on the inner wheelhouse, and these ended up just a little bit bigger because I believe when they made these spot welds, the machine may have twisted a little bit and oblonged or kind of mushed the metal, so it makes a hole a little bigger. I've also removed the material from the back side of the outer wheelhouse, and that's where this finished panel connects right here. So that had to be cleaned off. Here's the end of the frame rail, and these are those flanges I talked about earlier, and there's also some spot welds going up from the bottom. I've trimmed off the material, give a nice straight line, and squared up the sheet metal from this forward section of the floor pan. And I think I mentioned before I might do a butt weld, but I've decided I like a lap weld better. So I will do a lap weld across this whole perimeter, and it'll make it a little more solid. I've done some more thinking on this outer wheelhouse. This section of the wheelhouse, I removed the material, and the thing is, whenever they put these together, this one they used some sort of a roller as a welder, and it had a bunch of grooves all the way through here. Made it very difficult to get apart. And I thought, you know, if it's that difficult to get apart, am I really gaining anything by separating all of this material? So what I've decided to do is section in the wheelhouse. I already have a line. I've got the perimeter in place. I can just weld these holes back shut, no problem. I'll trim this up a little better here, and then I will make the new panel basically puzzle piece into that panel, and then I'll weld it all back in. It'll be good and solid. Just didn't really make much sense to bust all this stuff apart and then, you know, fight to get it back in. And I've dealt with these before, and I've had some difficulty with the fitment of these wheelhouses, but I think if I do it this way, it'll fit much better. So that'll be the end of this video. I've already separated the panel of the floor pan repair, kind of already done some prep work on it, but I'll cover this more as I get into the assembly of this back half of the car. Again, thanks for watching. I appreciate it.